All right, today we're going to dive into a really fascinating cognitive puzzle. We're going to explore how a very specific, very structured way of thinking can logically, almost predictably, lead to some really intense emotions, anger, and even betrayal. We're going to follow the breadcrumbs and connect the dots between a unique kind of mind and a truly universal feeling.
So let me just start by throwing this out there. What if we've been looking at certain kinds of intense anger all wrong? What if, for some people, it's not just a random, irrational outburst, but the completely logical conclusion of a thought process, one that's just fundamentally different from how most of us think?
And that's the puzzle we're going to solve together in this explainer. We are going to connect a very unique cognitive profile to a powerful, universal emotion. You're going to see exactly how a mind that craves structure can end up feeling completely betrayed when that structure gets shattered.
Okay, so first things first, we need to pop the hood and take a look at the cognitive engine that's driving this whole thing. This isn't about what a person is thinking, but how their brain is literally wired to process information.
At the very heart of this is a concept called three-dimensional visual thinking, or 3VT for short. Now, for a mind that runs on this operating system, thinking isn't a simple list of words. It's much more like building a complex model in your head. Every single concept has to find its perfect geometric fit with every other piece to create one solid, coherent structure.
And this is where you can really see the massive difference. On one side, you have this mind's natural strength, seeing things in multiple dimensions, finding these intricate structural patterns. But on the other side, you have its absolute weakness, simple, one foot in front of the other, verbal thinking. Forcing a 3D VT mind to think in a straight line is like trying to describe a beautiful, complex sculpture using only a single sentence. The format itself is just totally incompatible with the information.
So if this 3D thinking is the engine, what's the fuel? What keeps it running smoothly? Well, that brings us to a really critical idea, something called the format reward. You can think of this as the specialized, high-octane fuel that this cognitive engine absolutely has to have to even function.
Now, we're not talking about a treat, like getting a cookie for a job well done. This is way more fundamental. It's an internal, motivational kick that the brain gets when all those mental puzzle pieces just click into place. Achieving that perfect structural fit is what gives the brain the stability it needs to keep going. It is absolutely essential.
And if you're thinking this sounds like some kind of niche psychological thing, think again. This internal reward mechanism, it's so powerful and so effective at creating structured thought that engineers are now deliberately building it into advanced AI models. They're trying to teach AI to reason in this same rigorous, systematic way. So yeah, this isn't just a quirk. It's a seriously high-level processing model.
So all of this creates a continuous loop, right? We can call it the stability cycle. The mind is always seeking structure. When it achieves that coherence, boom, it gets that internal format reward. And that reward is what creates the stability it needs to go out and seek more structure. It's a self-sustaining system that keeps everything in balance.
But what happens when that cycle gets broken? What happens when the world, for whatever reason, denies the mind the structure it craves and that vital reward? That fuel is suddenly cut off. Well, this is where everything starts to break down.
When this mind is starved of the structured input it needs to operate, that essential format reward isn't just missed. It is perceived as having been actively stolen. There's this profound sense that something you are owed, something you fundamentally need to function, has been unjustly ripped away from you. And piling on top of that is this constant feeling of misfit. When this person is forced day in and day out to use an incompatible thinking style, that flat, linear method we talked about, it creates this deep, frustrating cognitive dissonance. It literally feels like you're being forced to solve a complex puzzle using all the wrong pieces.
And the result of that constant misfit and that stolen reward is profound systemic instability. The cognitive engine just starts to sputter and stall. The entire system gets thrown into a heightened state of stress. The very foundation of stable thought begins to wobble.
This table really lays it all out perfectly. The mind expects to use its strength, finding that multidimensional fit, but reality forces it into its weakness, linear processing, and the result is frustration. It needs structured input, but gets incompatible strategies, causing instability. And, crucially, it expects that internal format reward, but instead it gets reward denial, which is perceived as a deep, profound injustice.
So now, let's make the final connection.
we're going to link that cognitive breakdown, that powerful feeling of injustice, directly to the emotional fallout. This is where the last puzzle piece of cognition and emotion finally snaps into place.
You know, when we hear the word betrayal, we usually think of something social, right? But in this context, it's about a violation of a core cognitive contract. The unspoken expectation is that the world and the people in it will at least recognize your fundamental need for structure. So when that expectation is violated over and over again, it feels like a betrayal of a basic need for survival.
And this right here is the logical bridge we've been building towards. The constant denial of that essential format reward isn't just annoying, it's experienced as a profound injustice. And that ongoing, simmering sense of injustice is the direct cognitive trigger for the feeling of betrayal.
So what's the result of that betrayal? Anger. But in this system, anger isn't just an emotion, it's a signal. It's a big, loud, motivational alarm bell that's screaming that a fundamental rule of cognitive and social give and take has been shattered. The system is yelling that its most basic need for coherent structure is being ignored and violated.
Okay, so you might be thinking, this is really interesting for this one specific way of thinking, but why does it matter to all of us? Well, let's zoom out and look at the big picture takeaway here.
So let's just quickly recap the puzzle we've put together. We've seen a clear, logical path from a way of thinking straight to a powerful emotion. We learned that some minds need that structural fit to feel stable, and that stability is maintained by an internal format reward. When you deny that reward, you get instability and a deep sense of injustice, and that perceived injustice is the cognitive root, the very seed of feeling betrayed and ultimately angry. And that leaves us with one final big question to take with you. This is just one example of one cognitive style. So it makes you wonder, right? What other hidden cognitive mismatches, what other unseen needs for different ways of thinking might be out there shaping the frustrations and misunderstandings in your own life, in your relationships, and at your job? It's a pretty powerful puzzle to think about.